Hello everyone friends, you're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we're going to break down the situation on the front line and around the world as of May 27th, 2026. It's been an incredibly packed day, a lot has happened, and quite a bit of it genuinely matters. So let's get straight into it without any lengthy preambles. Zaporizhzhia sector. Voskresenka is taken, the first defensive line is crumbling. We'll start with Zaporizhzhia. Today saw something that had long been anticipated. The Eastern grouping of forces and the Russian Ministry of Defense officially confirmed the capture of Voskresenka. This is backed up by footage published by the grouping today. The video shows Russian servicemen raising the tricolor at multiple points across the settlement. Not just one episode, there are around a dozen of them from different parts of the town. Looking at the timeline of the past few days, everything developed in an escalating pattern. On May 22nd, reports emerged of advances near Verkhnya Tersa. From the 23rd onwards, the map started being updated around Voskresenka. On the 25th, data came in about a breakthrough near Dobropasovo. And today, May 27th, Voskresenka has been officially confirmed. Dobropasovo deserves a separate mention. The Ukrainian side officially refuses to acknowledge dense Russian control over the settlement. They're talking about a sabotage reconnaissance group, a small unit that infiltrated the area. But at the same time, they acknowledge that the countermeasures deployed by the AFU produced no result. If the counterattacks failed, that's not a small recon team. That's a genuine combat presence. Draw your own conclusions. There are also rumors circulating about Russian sabotage reconnaissance groups penetrating the settlement of Pokrovsky. But there's no confirmation of that yet. It remains at the level of hearsay. Now for the operational picture. The line Verkhnya Tersa, Voskresenka, Dobropasovo is gradually closing. Over the next 2 to 3 days, we expect information on Hulyapilska and likely a status update on Rizdvianka. Once this line is fully sealed and painted red on the map, we'll be able to say definitively the first defensive layer of the eastern Zaporizhzhia defense has fallen. That's a significant moment. After this, Russian units step out onto more open operational terrain. A bridgehead is forming east of the Hychel River and in the surrounding area, and using Hulyapol and this line as a foundation, the Russian side will be in a position to push forward both toward Orikhiv, where a major battle for Orikhiv will begin, and in the direction of Zaporizhzhia city itself. At the same time, surveillance footage is already appearing from the Tavrisky area, the next node of Ukrainian defense, northwest of Orikhiv. Russian aviation is striking that settlement with increasing intensity. This is the classic precursor to follow-on assault operations. Aviation first, then infantry. Kostiantynivka, the hottest point on the entire front line right now. Moving on to Kostiantynivka, I'll say it straight. This is the most intense location on the entire front line right now. The assault here moved into its active phase long ago. It's not ramping up. It's been in full swing for a while. The map can't keep pace with the real situation on the ground. Russian units are advancing faster than the updates are being recorded. According to several sources, around 1,000 Ukrainian servicemen are currently encircled in the Promyslovyi district in the southern part of the city. This is no longer just fighting on the outskirts. This is a partial encirclement within the city itself. Ukrainian military blogger Muchny, who provides fairly candid coverage of this sector, paints a picture in his latest posts that is difficult to read. The offensive is pressing from virtually every direction simultaneously, and this is confirmed by Ukrainian sources. The primary strikes are currently hitting the Sim-Vitriv, Sonyachny, and Pivdeny districts. These are the outer neighborhoods bearing the brunt of the assault. Deeper into the city, across the Centralny, Dekorativny, Suputnik, and Belhisky districts, aviation is operating on a near-continuous basis. FABs and KABs are hammering Ukrainian positions around the clock. The pattern of pressure is built around a clear logic. The Russian side isn't just striking at the front edge of the advance, it's systematically dismantling the entire defensive structure and logistics network within the urban area. Reconnaissance drones are permanently overhead, fiber optic strike drones are working the streets, and aviation is methodically destroying fortified positions to prevent any consolidation. The density of fire is such that any movement through the city carries enormous risk. For Ukrainian servicemen there right now, the situation is extremely dire. Two potential cauldrons are now clearly visible on the map: the southeastern and southwestern parts of the city, the Metalur and Promyslovy districts. Almost no information has come out of those two neighborhoods since the very start of the fighting for the city. Either things there are already resolved, or the final stage of encirclement is underway. The fate of both districts should become clear in the near term. The most likely scenario is breakout attempts toward the Centralny Rynok district, and then further toward the northern neighborhoods. Once Russian units straighten the front line, roughly along that axis, the final battle for the northern part of Kostiantynivka will begin. Stepnohirske direction. The AFU has the initiative here. This needs to be said honestly. On the Stepnohirske-Kamensky axis, the initiative currently remains with Ukrainian forces, and that has to be acknowledged. Reports indicate that the AFU have closed to within roughly 2 kilometers of Kamenske. Pavlivka, according to available information, has come fully under Ukrainian control. Attempts to push toward Mali-Shcherbaki are being recorded. Around Stepnohirsk, a grey zone persists and fighting continues. The Russian side has so far been unable to stabilize this sector. It's a difficult stretch of the front, and the warning signals coming from it need to factor into the overall picture of the day. Kupiansk, Russian units in the northwestern part of the city. On the Kupiansk axis, the map was also updated over the past 24 hours. The western grouping of forces published footage from the northwestern part of the city. Officially, this is presented as patrol footage, though the character of what's happening on screen looks more like the work of sabotage reconnaissance groups. Calling it a classic patrol is a stretch, but the point remains the same. Russian servicemen are present in this part of the city, and it's on camera, which means the gradual process of re-establishing control over territory lost during the Ukrainian counter-offensive in early 2026 is continuing. Kharkiv. Graniv has fallen. Movement toward Kazacha-Lopan. The Kharkiv sector brings important news. Over the past several days, the northern grouping of forces was reporting daily advances in the Graniv area. Today, the grouping, alongside the Ministry of Defense, officially confirmed. The defense at this settlement has been broken. Russian units passed through Graniv, moved toward Shevchenko, and are continuing in the direction of Kazacha-Lopan. The topography matters here. Graniv, Shevchenko, and Kazacha-Lopan are essentially fused together, with no meaningful separation between them. So saying that the Russian side is already entering Kazacha-Lopan is entirely justified. In the near term, we expect consolidation of the bridgeheads around Veterinan and Graniv, after which pressure will intensify on Shevchenko and directly on Kazacha-Lopan. Looking at the broader dynamic, this year has seen confirmed Russian army advances both around Veterinane and now at Graniv. The logic of these moves points to Kazacha-Lopan as the next objective, with possible follow-on movement southward towards Slatin and Derhachi. The Kharkiv offensive is gaining momentum. The Russian side is now pressing on Kharkiv simultaneously from the north, northeast, east, and southeast. Sumy sector, 3 bridgeheads, and continued expansion. On the Sumy sector, fighting for Pisarivka and Vilshanka continues. Official confirmation from the Ministry of Defense and the northern grouping is expected in the near term. Speaking of the broader picture in the Sumy region, 3 separate Russian bridgeheads are currently operating there. The first and largest, formed after the AFU were pushed out of Kursk Oblast. It's referred to as either the Sudja or the Sumy bridgehead, depending on the source. The second is the Myropil bridgehead, which is steadily expanding. The third is the Hrabiv bridgehead. That's where the Russian advance on this sector originally began. Advances are being recorded across all 3 bridgeheads, with the front line being straightened roughly along the Novodmytrivka-Taratutin-Lizna axis. Officially, this is all framed as the creation of a buffer zone, but in reality, what we're looking at is the expansion of bridgeheads and the establishment of additional pressure points against Ukrainian forces, at minimum to draw off reserves. At maximum, this is groundwork for potential further offensive action, though not necessarily this
Zelensky
year, and the timeline. What's being said publicly versus behind closed doors. Now to an important geopolitical bloc. Yesterday, Zelensky publicly stated that the hot phase of hostilities in Ukraine will be over by November 2026, precisely timed to coincide with the US midterm elections. Neat timing, to say the least. However, today Western media are reporting a very different picture. According to their sources, behind closed doors, Zelensky warned his inner circle that Ukraine needs to prepare for at least another 2 to 3 years of war. That figure is not accidental. It reflects the actual assessments of the situation, which diverge significantly from what's being said publicly. Will Belarus enter the war? It's been an actively discussed question over recent days. I'll answer directly and immediately. I don't think it will. Here's why. The most important thing here isn't the information noise, the threats, or the political visits. It's the data from Ukrainian intelligence. And Ukrainian intelligence is stating plainly, no concentrations of Belarusian or Russian troops are being observed on the Belarusian-Ukrainian border. That's the baseline fact to work from. Now for the surrounding context. Tikhanovskaya came to Kiev. That's a direct and fairly loud slap in the face toward Lukashenko. Why Ukraine's political leadership felt the need to do this is a genuine question. If the goal was to further inflame relations with Minsk, mission accomplished. Lukashenko doesn't forget things like this. There's also a detail that tends to get left out of the current conversation. It was Lukashenko himself who released her after she was detained. Some dictatorship. Lukashenko himself stated, Belarus will enter the conflict only in the event of a direct threat to its own territory. It will not strike first. Alongside this, news emerged of a phone call between Macron and Lukashenko. The Ukrainian side reacted with considerable irritation, viewing it as legitimizing the Belarusian leader. Some are drawing a parallel with Macron calling Putin on the eve of February 24, 2022. We all remember how effective those conversations turned out to be. Madyar, the head of Ukraine's unmanned systems, declared that Ukraine has already identified 500 targets on Belarusian territory, ready to be actioned if necessary. Some of the louder voices in the Ukrainian information space are talking about Minsk in 3 hours. All of this is rhetoric with very limited connection to actual military realities. The substantive point is this. Ukraine has zero interest in extending the front line by another 1,000+ kilometers. That's an enormous additional burden on an already stretched army. And the units currently stationed along the Belarusian-Ukrainian border ended up there for understandable reasons. Not everyone draws the eastern sectors. Getting those forces into real combat operations is an entirely different conversation. The one thing that introduces a degree of uncertainty into my assessment, escalation in general serves Russian interests. Progress on the front is slow, questions from the public are mounting, and a new flashpoint could usefully divert attention. But that's just one factor, and it doesn't outweigh everything else. Europe, NATO within NATO, and force build-up on the eastern flank. In Poland today, a strategic defense pact was signed between the United Kingdom and Poland. Western media have already picked up the phrase, NATO is building another NATO inside NATO. A new military bloc is forming, involving the UK, Poland, Germany, France, and apparently a number of other states. Analysts assess this bloc as oriented primarily against Russia. Exactly where Ukraine fits into this architecture remains to be seen, but the very fact of creating such a grouping signals that the militarization of the Eastern European region is continuing. Yesterday, the European Union allocated over €12 billion in military assistance to the Baltic states. The stated reason being the increasing frequency of drone overflights of their territory. There are also reports of 2 new divisions being formed along the eastern NATO flank, with a combined strength of up to 60,000 personnel. All of this is unfolding against the backdrop of an ongoing war in Ukraine, and already around the Suwalki corridor between Belarus and Poland, a new point of tension is beginning to take shape. One conflict hasn't ended yet, and the contours of the next potential one are already starting to appear. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. It genuinely matters. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell. Until the next episode, take care of yourselves.